What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of VVaves. Just as a quick reminder, we did start a VideoCast last Saturday. So if you want to see what we're talking about, then you can go ahead and check us out on YouTube. That's ViVaves. If you want to stay in touch with us in general, suggest some topics, talk to us. That is at CyberVaves on Twitter, CYBERVVAVES. And with that said, I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm your host, Den. So today we got a pretty cool show, I think. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about Microsoft. They have a new trade-in offer for their devices. Different, you can trade in certain devices and get a little more cash than you would for your regular ones. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Chevy has a new car that will compete with the Tesla. So we'll talk about those after the break in the show. But I first want to jump into Halo 5. So we're about a week out from Halo, and I'm already reading on IGN that Halo 5 will have a 9 gigabyte day one patch for the multiplayer, which includes the the maps and whatnot. Does this worry you as a person coming into the game? Does this worry you any that the game might still be a little bit incomplete?
I think my problem with that is the same thing. It was the same thing that happened for Tony Hawk. And in Tony Hawk's instance, the day one patch was more than the actual game itself. The patch file was bigger than the total game. So I think it's a little bit concerning in a sense where it seems like developers and publishers are really just trying to rush products out and not really taking the time and finesse and care that would normally be seen before the patches and DLCs nowadays.
Right.
But it's, on the other side of the coin, I think it's also very cool that if something's not working right, they can actually go ahead and hot patch and fix it. And just continue to provide content. So it's a double-edged sword, but I just wish they would take more time to really monitor what they're going to release to the public.
Yeah, I think Halo is going to be a great game, and like I said, it comes out in a week, so we'll have some more on that game, when it releases.
Well, I just wanted to ask you real quick. I know we did pre-order it. How big was the actual file size? I forgot.
55 gigabytes for the game digitally, and that's it's already downloaded. So as we experienced with Tony Hawk, as soon as 1201 hits, boom, that game is ready to play, which is awesome.
And then expanding on that, I remember when we got Tony Hawk, they had the patch as well, but when we pre-ordered the game, and we had downloaded it, the patch was already downloaded in the pre-order. So do you think we'll have to wait for 9 gigabytes of download to finish?
I think that what they'll do is they'll release the patch early, let everyone download it who already has the game pre-installed or pre-downloaded, and then I think it'll basically be like Tony Hawk. It'll be ready to go once that time hits. I think that's how it'll work.
Okay.
But moving on, if you don't have anything else to say, EA Access is a thing. If you don't know about EA Access, real quick, it's basically a program, paid program, $5 a month or $29.99 for a year, and you get early access to EA titles, Battlefront, Madden, NBA Live, FIFA, there's a lot of sports games, Need for Speed, Plants vs. Zombies, stuff like that. You get a 10% discount on all games, and you get you get the early access. The 5 days early access is what it's supposed to be. And Star Wars is an EA game. So I guess, how do you feel about EA Access? Is this something that you might see yourself getting into?
Well, in personal talks, when I think of EA, I think of more so a gaming company, or not gaming, I'm sorry, a sports company, Madden's, NFL's, the soccer's, basketball, hockey, all that stuff. So without games like Battlefront, Battlefield, Need for Speed, games of that nature, I really wouldn't be too interested into it. Now, a big reason why we were looking into this is you get the 10% off when you buy a new game, and then also if you do have it, you can get you can play Star Wars Battlefront November 12th. The game comes out November 27th, so that is 15 days of
Right. That's a
exclusive
lot
play.
of early playing time you can get.
Yeah, and just going ahead with the Battlefront, I think it's interesting because we reported in the last show, the participants for the beta was 9 million, and so I think EA is really starting to take one and say this game is a big deal. Let's get all these incentives, and they're pushing it by letting November 12th come out so people will rush to EA access, and I believe people will simply for early access to Battlefront. So it's pretty interesting. Like I said, I don't think I would have gotten it if it wasn't for Battlefront. But what's really cool to mention is the EA Vault. It's similar to Xbox's Gold program, where you can download a free game every month. Where they differ, though, is the EA Vault. When the game's in the vault, it stays in the vault. It doesn't leave it. You can download it a month from now, a year from now. It'll still be in there, and they are constantly adding new titles to it. And a really cool incentive to getting it is they offer a lot of AAA titles, believe it or not. So uh, in that aspect of it, I think EA is really starting to pioneer the pay to play, or the rental method of digital games. So it's really interesting, and I like where they're going with it. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that EA Access, I think it is a nice thing. Um, you know, so mentioning real quick, I'm sorry, you had just mentioned the Star Wars beta. So last night on national television, Star Wars actually unveiled their trailer for their new movie. I was wondering, did you happen to catch that? And if you didn't, last night, is that something that you watched this morning? And how did you feel about it? I mean, I know you're a Star Wars fan, so go ahead.
well, yeah, I actually heard about the trailer being released this morning, so I got on YouTube, checked it out. We weren't able to catch it last night because we don't do cable. We actually stream. We find it cheaper and it suits our needs. But yeah, the from what I saw, the trailer looks absolutely amazing. I can't wait for it. It comes out on Christmas. At first, I was a little skeptical because Disney they bought the rights to it now, so I was very skeptical and very on the fence about, do I want them to go forward with this? Will it tarnish Star Wars name? Will it be good or bad? And after everything I've seen, and I have confidence in J.J. Abrams, the director of it. He's actually the for the Star Treks, so I love those movies, and I think it'll be really good. The trailer shows off some amazing stuff. I'm not going to go too much into it because people want to go in the movies blind, and then also filming your reactions on YouTube. So we won't show the trailer in the video cast for those listening, but I'm very impressed with it. Very impressed.
Yeah, not being much of I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan. I like the game. I like the movies. I've seen them all, but I'm not like a diehard, super fan that there are out there. But I'll see the movie. It looked great. The trailer looked amazing. Like you said, we don't want to ruin too much. So go check it out if you want. If not, stay tuned. The movie comes out Christmas Day, I believe. And yeah. So Tim Cook officially announced that the Apple TV will be released next week. It will begin shipping next week. This is big news. They had announced that it'll come out in October, late October, but no official date was given. So I'm super excited about this. There's the 13 gigabyte model that's $149, or the 64 gigabyte model that is $199. I, for one, don't see myself going all out and spending that $200 on that 64 gigabyte model, because I'm treating this Apple TV as just another streaming device like a Roku or a Chromecast, just for my Netflix, for my Hulu, for my Sling TV. But the reason I'm getting it over those other devices is because it allows the AirPlay between the iPhone and the iPad, so you can pop your stuff right up there on the TV screen, which is really cool. I guess I wanted to get your take on Apple TV in general real quick. Just how do you feel about it? Is this something maybe you I know you said you're a streaming person. Is this something that, you know, you could see yourself maybe picking up down the road?
Yeah, I think the Apple TV, it looks really interesting. For my personal setup right now, it doesn't work because me and my girlfriend are old fashioned. We don't have a TV in our room. So I have an Xbox One and the smart TV out in my living room. So that's already kind of my main hub. But just because it's not economically sound for me to buy one right now because of only one TV, it doesn't mean I'm not interested in it. I say if we ever do decide to get a second TV, then yeah, I would probably definitely pick it up. And I think a lot of people aren't really talking about it, but another exciting aspect of it is that you can actually play games on it. I mean, they're going to have, apps so developers can develop games for the TV, which I think
Right.
will be pretty cool. So yeah, I can't wait for it.
And with that said, we're going to jump into a quick break. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about the Microsoft trade-in offer that I had mentioned earlier. And Chevy has a new car that is going to compete with the Tesla. So we'll talk a little bit about those. And we got one more thing that I know you wanted to mention. So we'll talk about all that as soon as we come back.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to CyberVaves. Be sure to check out these two gunslingers on Twitter at CyberVaves. That's at CYBERVVAVES to keep up on all the latest news, technology, and gaming. Also, don't forget CyberVaves is now on iTunes, so give them a follow so you do not miss a second of the action.
And we're back. Thank you for sticking around through that quick commercial break. So I had mentioned the Microsoft trade-in offer that they had on the table. This offer applies for any Microsoft computer that's $599 or more, but does not apply to the Surface Pro 4 or the Surface Book. So essentially they'll give you $200 for your computer trade-in, or if you're coming from a MacBook, $300 for your MacBook. So that's $100 extra. Is this? I mean, how do you feel about this? Is this something that I don't know? Do you see this as worth it? Is there a catch to it? What do you think?
I'll say maybe if you had a Windows laptop, something of that nature, just something that's kind of getting old, you don't really use anymore. Maybe you got a newer laptop, or just you're looking to go and get a newer laptop, and say you already have something stashed away and you want to. In that case, then yeah, it'll be worth it. But as far as Apple users with their MacBooks, not at all. I mean, you're almost giving away something that costs $1,000 on average, and getting $300 for it. And my thing is, at that point, I would rather go to Craigslist and get even $400. You could at least get $400 for any Apple product. They hold their value very well.
Yeah.
I have a 2012 MacBook and a MacBook Pro, and that thing I could probably still sell it to this day for about $600 or $700. So as far as stuff, I don't agree with that at all. But whatever situation you're in, I would definitely just kind of weigh the pros and cons about it.
Yeah, that was my that was my only concern, or my problem with this thing was, like you said, we have the 2012 MacBook. And easily, you could easily get $600 for that. So this $300 that they're trying to persuade you with, Microsoft is going to have to up that, double it in order to bring Mac people over. So I want to, I guess, put the ball in your court with this next topic. You were telling me, obviously, we're both huge Tesla fans. There's not many cars right now that can compete with Tesla. But Chevy is, I guess, creating or designing a new car. It's not the Chevy Volt with a V. It's the Chevy Bolt with a B. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Jumping into it, the Chevy Bolt. It's a new electric car that Chevy's putting out. To make it clear, the car has been confirmed. I believe earlier this year. So we've known about it for quite some time. The reason why we're talking about it is because it did make recent news, and just to overall go and talk about it again. For those who don't know, the Chevy Bolt, it's almost like a hatchback SUV. It's electric. What separates it from Tesla is they're trying to make it a mass consumer so anybody can almost afford it. Um, the car itself, it can get 200 miles of range. Teslas, they average a little bit more than 300. So the range, you're trading off a little bit of range there. And then the price point for it is actually $30,000. Now that's comparable to a Tesla's Model 3, which they want to show what it looks like in 2016. But the Chevy Bolt actually wants to be released by 2016. So, you know, essentially, although Tesla is making the electric vehicle popular and gaining traction, the Chevy Bolt will be the very first to release. The key word here is to release actual affordable car for regular consumers. But anyway, moving on, the reason why they made the news is because Chevy and LG are actually partnering up. And when the numbers were ran and they talked about the partnership, LG is actually making more of the car than Chevy is, which is interesting. LG actually invested $250 million in Korea as far as making a facility able to carry out the orders for the Chevy Bolt. And, you know, Chevy has actually been making cars for quite some time now, but it's interesting because LG is actually making most of the parts for the car, even for the actual engine itself.
Now,
LG is
is this
that.
LG as in the phone company?
Yes,
Okay.
LG, the phone company. You know, LG, they make TVs. They have a lot of their hands in a lot of electronics.
Right, yeah, they're all over, not just TVs, I guess, or phones, I guess.
So yeah, interesting. And it almost raises the question, since LG is doing so much of the production and really Chevy's just the name behind it, backing the car. What do you think LG would even make an electric vehicle of their own? So it's very interesting to think about that. And regardless of who wins or how they win, I think it's a win-win for the consumer. It's pushing innovation. And for those who are watching the video cast, the car looks absolutely beautiful. Me personally, I think the design is better than the Tesla. It doesn't mean that it is, but for me, because I love hatchback cars.
Right.
And I don't, you know, Tesla, they don't have one yet, but I mean, yeah, the car just looks very sleek and just real futuristic, but not overly futuristic to the point where it looks stupid. So hopefully we'll see this car in 2016, and I think it'll be a hit. And, you know, 30,000. Just regular price tags, not to mention incentives. So you're looking at maybe 5,000 to 7,000, depending on where you're living at. So, you know, you have a car for almost $23,000 to $24,000. So that's really cool.
So yeah, I think Chevy is moving in the right direction with their cars. I'm a huge fan of the Volt already. So the Bolt, you know, with that price point of $30,000 isn't, you know, it's out of reach right now. But with, you know, I think that it's more in range of average day consumers rather than the $100,000 Teslas. But when the Model 3 comes out, it'll definitely be a competing thing. So I know just wrapping up the show, we have one last thing we wanted to talk about. The Nexus 6P. Now, I don't know too much about this, but I know you've done a little bit of looking into it. Do you want to tell us about it? And I guess I can give you my comments.
Yeah, the Nexus 6P, it's Google's new Nexus phone. They actually they released two variants of the phone. It's the Nexus 6P, which is, you know, the high-end performance, you know, the flagship of the Nexus. And then they released the Nexus 5X. Real quick, the Nexus 5X is just incremental updates on the Nexus 5. People love the Nexus 5 and said, hey, we just want, you know, round about the same phone, but just, you know, make it more modern. And so they did that. These phones were announced in September. They're available now, obviously. But jumping back on the Nexus 6P, it has a 12-megapixel camera. It can shoot 4K, you know, all the bells and whistles. It comes in 32, 64, and 128 gigabyte storage. The phone's extremely, extremely affordable. I believe it was the 32 gigs starting at, I want to say, $499. That's very cheap considering modern flagship phones. I like how Google has kind of been staying on the cheap end of things lately.
Yeah, they always have a good price point on their phones.
Exactly. The phone battery, it comes with a 3450 milliamp hour battery, and it supports USB Type-C and fast charging. So I mean that's a huge battery.
Yes, that's ginormous.
Yeah, definitely. The display is AMOLED, obviously. The size of the screen is 5.7 inches and with a resolution of 1440 by 2560 or 518 ppi.
Pixels per
Obviously,
inch, yes.
and then it has a Gorilla Glass 4, but the phone unfortunately does not have expandable storage. So what you decide to get is what you're staying with. We're seeing that a lot more lately with a whole bunch of Android phones. Samsung just recently did that as well. No more expandable storage. And also the battery does not come out. You can't, take your battery pack out anymore. The phone's all metal, well, aluminum. So a lot of mixed feelings about that there. But one of the biggest complaints about this phone is it doesn't have optical image stabilization. The front facing camera, it's 8 GB, records it has a resolution of 720p, records at 30 frames per second, and it does have two front facing speakers, kind of like the HTC ones. So it's, if you listen to music without earbuds, it's extremely loud. And then just obviously has 3 gigs of RAM and a fingerprint scanner. The phone's actually being called the best Android phone ever made, which is very impressive, and it has to really live up to those claims. So I'm thinking about actually trying to get this phone. I don't know. I've had the Nexus 4. My only problem with it, this is like 3-4 years ago, was that the resolution for the phone was very, very blurry. Coming from Samsung at that time.
Right.
So this phone is looks like it's going to be a home run, and also obviously it's Google. It's a Nexus phone, so it comes with the latest version of Android 6.0 Marshmallow. And the big thing about that is because it links into Google Fi. That's Project Google Fi, and what it is essentially is you get a SIM card, you put it in your, and Google, the SIM card seamlessly switches from tower to tower, finding the best signal. So what you do is you have a plan, and if it takes any Wi-Fi around your phone that is an open network, and you can use it to make your calls. Now, say if you're leaving distance from this Wi-Fi, it'll switch to a tower. The only carriers right now that offer tower support, and Sprint. So that's not to be confused to say that you have to have those two carriers. It just means for this to work, it bounces.
I'm sorry, that was T-Mobile and Sprint, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll search for T-Mobile and Sprint's towers to connect. And it's really cool. The thing that's really awesome about this is when you get a plan and you say, okay, hey, I want to pay for 2 GB of mobile data. Instead of rolling over like most carriers do, they actually deduct it from your bill. So if you pay for 2 gigs and you only use one, in one of the videos there was a bill. The guy's bill was $40. He didn't use all his data, so they subtracted 8, and he only had to pay $32. So I think that's really interesting, and I think it'll add a lot of people who have connectivity issues. Me, for example, where I work, I have T-Mobile. The service is terrible. You can't calls drop frequently, constantly, all the time.
Yeah.
If I were to have this, it could swap to a Sprint tower or a Wi-Fi network and just work without me having to really think about it. Because for me to make a call outside of my job, I actually have to use Google Hangout. I have to call from Wi-Fi. So I think it's very interesting. I think if more companies get on board with it, such as Verizon and AT&T, I think it'll be a huge game changer. But then again, that would kind of make them lose business, because the SIM card does not. You don't need a carrier. It searches from tower to tower. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's something you'd be interested in trying?
Yeah, I mean, feeling? So I like the concept of it, the whole switching towers. I think there's a few questions to be answered. Now, I guess I don't know how much you know. Will the I guess the seamless, you said seamless switching between towers. Mm-hmm. Now, will that affect say you're on a phone call on the Sprint network, and your Sprint network drops and there's perfect T-Mobile reception? Now, I know going from Sprint tower to Sprint tower would not affect your connection, because that happens all the time on road trips and stuff like that. But going from a different carrier to from one carrier to another carrier, will that affect your connection? I mean, who knows? There's questions, yet to be answered. But overall, I think the concept is great. Google getting into the phone service business. I guess they're already in the phone market. Now they're getting to the service side of it. That's just Google being Google, doing their thing. Getting their hands into something new. I think it's a cool concept, and I definitely think it'll take off, because anything Google always seems to grow rapidly.
Yeah. From my understanding, I'll have to do a little bit more research, but I think the tower switching is seamless. Kind of like you mentioned, from on a road trip, whenever you're on the phone, it does constantly shoot out to the nearest tower with a better signal. It's kind of like the situation when you get like unlocked iPhones, how it has all those bands and antennas.
I don't even want to talk about that. Those are so. I tried so hard to understand that concept, but it is just so confusing to me. But I mean, I do see where you're coming from, but
well, not jumping into the bands and antennas, and it just, since the phones are becoming more and more unlocked nowadays, the antennas and bands automatically can switch to the best tower, or if you don't want to put a certain service on it, it's just unlocked,
Right.
So
yeah,
if you have 5 antennas, 5
sense.
carriers, whoever you decide to be your carrier, then it'll switch to that primary antenna. So the phones are now coming kind of standard with capabilities to work on different networks. So Google Project Fi just kind of strengthens that core capability of it, and switches onto the towers that are allowing the service to work with that. And the reason why we brought that up is because you had to actually register and wait on it was a huge Nexus 6P. You're actually able to jump to the front of the line, and you can have 24 hours to register it. I believe the registration period is over now, but people who were able to do that, they did receive their SIM cards. You can watch a lot of cool videos on it and about the topic on YouTube. So with that said, I think we're going to wrap up this show here. Hopefully we'll see you next week. And just once again, we wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been watching or listening to the podcast. The numbers don't really look like they're there on your end, but from what we've seen, iTunes alone, we're almost close to 100 listens, and we only have 7 episodes up so far. So we just want to thank you guys for the tremendous support. You guys have been awesome.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
And hopefully we can keep you and grow our audience. So, Sten, if you had anything to add to that?
No, I just wanted to, I guess continue with the thanks. Yeah, like he said, our one episode is up to almost 30 downloads. I believe it was episode 6, which is huge. And I guess we just want your feedback, I guess. If you guys have anything you want to tell us, or any topics you want us to discuss, or anything like that, get to us on Twitter. It's, at CyberVaves, CYBERVVAVES. And just let us know if there's something you want us to talk about. Or we're always looking for, I think we have one guest that we could potentially have on the show coming up relatively soon. But other than that, I mean, yeah, that's all we had for you on today's episode.
All right, well, with that said, I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm your host, Sten. Peace.
Peace.